Welcome to Wisdom Inspired, a podcast designed to help high achievers to eliminate burnout and overwhelm. Now let's prepare to open our hearts, our minds, and our notebooks to receive today's wisdom.
We are discussing what actions will you take? Strategy. What actions will you take? Strategy. Strategy is simply defined as devising a course of actions or a general plan to achieve one or more long-term or overall goals under conditions of uncertainty. When I saw that definition about being under conditions of uncertainty, it made me really rethink what I've always believed about a strategy. Because oftentimes we use that word, especially in business or even in our lives, right? When we're dealing with finances, when we're dealing with the best way to address certain things, right? We always talk about having a strategy. What's our approach? And it helped me to really see that this is only when we're under conditions of uncertainty. Because usually when we're certain about something, we really don't sit down and strategize. We don't really sit down and think about what our course of action is. And sometimes we begin to just operate from our comfort zone, things that we're used to dealing with. And it made me realize that that is often where the enemy attacks us. Because when we get comfortable with the way that we've always done something and we've always approached something, then it cuts us off from being able to understand or hear the new thing that God is doing. And keeping in mind that the S for strategy is coming from the pause, right? So God will cause pauses in our lives because He's wanting us to reestablish that connection. He needs us to reopen that gate, that flow, so that we can understand that there's a long-term goal here for us being here on earth. This is not just about the temporary, short-term things that we're dealing with in our lives. There's a long-term or an overall goal as a believer that our purpose is meant to serve, right? So God will use those pauses to really sit down and reopen us to His strategies, making us understand that there is a long-term overall goal that is under conditions of uncertainty, right? Because our lives are uncertain. There's nothing that we as believers are certain of other than Christ Himself, all that He has done. That's where our certainty lies. Because if we try to find it in anything else, that is where doubt arises. That is where the world can cause us to test us and see, are we really true about what we believe and what we stand on? And I found this in studying over in 1 Corinthians. It's chapter 1, verses 18 and 19, and actually further down through 22 and 25 as well. And the summary and commentation was that there were two different groups that Paul was talking about, Greeks and Jews, and he said they both looked for different proofs of truth. And he said one desired miraculous signs and the other sought proof through reason and logic. But Paul didn't care to cater to their worldly desires for verification or certainty. It says Paul believed and stood on his only proof was Christ crucified. So as believers, that's all the proof, all the certainty that we need. But we know that living in this fallen world, there is uncertain conditions that arises. And so we need strategies that come from God that enables us to be able to know what actions we need to take. And understanding that the pause is because there's a change, there's a shift. Coach Dream helped us understand yesterday that there's interludes and then there's pauses. Right? Interludes is a continuation, but a pause means there's a change. There's something new being introduced in your life because it is a stopping point, right? But an interlude is simply a moment to transition. And oftentimes we can confuse transition with actual redirection or a complete change of course. And so when we understand that pauses come because God's doing something new, It means he's getting you ready for the new thing. It's not just transitioning you, but he's taking you into a completely different place. So the things that used to serve you won't serve you no more. The way you used to approach things ain't going to be good enough no more. The way you used to deal with stuff, he don't want you doing it that way no more, because he is always about doing something new. And he says his wisdom and his insight is what we constantly need to stay connected to, because that is the thing that's going to allow us to do what God has called us to do in the way that he's calling us to do it right now. See, we have to understand, sometimes I've heard, different members of our community use the phrase, we play chess, not checkers. God is here. He ain't even playing chess. He ain't even playing none of that, because God is the final authority, right? He don't have to play, but because he created certain things with orders, he has to go about, and he will never violate his own word. So there's ways that he moves because he knows what's happening. He's at the control board. He can see the bigger picture. And what we have to understand is that he wants us to be skilled in making sure that we're devising our course of action according to his overall plan. And the only way that we can do that is to be clear in getting those directions. I was looking and I went to see where is strategy, where are some different ways that it's used in the Bible, right? Well, the word that comes up is actually a Hebrew word, and it's spelled E-T-S-A-H. And it really sums up and means counsel or advice. So strategy in itself is about the counsel we receive. In Psalms 33, verses 10 through 13, it says, "The Lord brings the counsel of the nations to nothing. He makes the plans of the peoples of no effect. The counsel of the Lord stands forever, the plans of his heart to all generations." So if we understand that strategy is equal to counsel, it's to the advice. Where are we getting our counsel? Where are we getting our advice about the approach? And remember, I said just a few minutes ago that oftentimes we get comfortable with the way that we've always done things because we become our own source of advice. We look back at how we did it before and we think, okay, that's the same way I need to do it now. We don't go to God and sit and say, okay, God, this situation has arose. How should I approach it? How do you want me to deal with it? Am I supposed to do something different here? And that's simply because as we develop and we mature, if we don't have pauses that cause us to need God, then we don't go back to him. We start to rely on our own understanding. We start to rely on the things that we know. And that is the danger for a believer, because God is always evolving and we should always be evolving. It's not that he doesn't want us to get comfortable. What he doesn't want for us is for us to get comfortable to a life without him. That's the difference. He wants us to get comfortable with living with him. So as we regain and go through our pauses, he's redirecting us to a place where we still need him. Because if you get so comfortable where you do not go to God for counsel and advice with the small things, you definitely not going to go to him for counsel and advice with the big things. So when the big uncertainties arise in life, you ain't prepared to deal with them because you ain't been used to going to him for the small things. So God says, I'm always keeping you on your toes. I'm always keeping you where you will find the value in my counsel. You will find the value in my ways and my advice. You will always know that it's my oil, even the oil that I gave you with the ability that you have that's limited without me. I still got more oil to give to you if you come and trust me, if you come and totally rely and depend on me for your approach, for the actions that you take. Because now when you realize that God is doing a new thing, you can't respond the old way to the new thing. There's scripture that tells you you can't put new wine in old wineskins, right? Because it ain't going to work. It ain't going to last because the old thing has already passed away. And God tells us we are new creatures. So being a new creature don't happen once. See, we renew daily in our mind and in our thinking. So we knew every time we get up. Every time we rise, we are new. So God says you got to always rely on me for your counsel and your advice. And so he's taking you from one place where your skills, your abilities, or your oil that's limited in how you can use it without him, he's taking you beyond that. He says, I want to get you where you get used to walking with me. So now I do them in increments, right? We talked about a couple other calls before. We talked about how God does things and they do similar to what the military does. They do those testings in small groups and then get you to the larger test. So God's doing the same thing when we have small pauses and go to something new. He's getting us prepared for those big pauses when our life seems to not go upside down, but it completely changes altogether. And he says, I don't want you to think that I'm causing pain to you, but I got to get you to where you get comfortable to always living with me. You can't get where you rely on your strength until it runs out and then come to me. If you stay connected, if you stay following my advice, stay following my counsel, stay living with me on a consistent and continuous basis, then you ain't going to never run out. You will always be prepared to deal with the thing that's in front of you because you're going to always come to me for the new strategy. You're going to always come to me and begin to understand that even though what the world creates repeats itself, I'm God. I don't never do nothing the same way every time. I'm going to always do a new thing because I'm that God. I'm the God that comes in to do what you didn't know how could be done. I got to introduce myself to you in a new way. See, trends repeat themselves because they're created by man. Man can't reinvent nothing because we limited in our mindset. If God don't give us the new thing, we don't know the new thing. But the world tries to do things without God. So if we are relying on the world's way of doing things, that's why we get distracted when we see other people doing something the same way, because we don't recognize that if God gives us the way to do it, it might look a certain way to you, but it's always a new thing because God gives me new things. He works in a new way. He has strategy for me every single day. I can't approach today the way I approached yesterday because today is not yesterday. It's gone. Today is a new day. So I need advice and counsel for today. So believers, let us start to rely on God totally and completely, because as we go through our pauses and we go to the new things that he introduces us to, that strategy for how to operate on that level will be given to us day by day by day. And he wants us to get where we're comfortable with that relationship, that intimate walk with him on a daily basis for our counsel and our advice. And I promise you, you'll start to see your own life in a new way. I know I have. When I start to get that reality that I just want to walk with him in everything, I don't even know how to wash dishes the same way no more. Because, God, I need you to tell me, is this the way I should do it today? Now, he might say in this particular routine, do it, but he might give me something a little bit better. He might say, you know what, you might not need that today. You might need to just go ahead and do them this way. Or you might need to just use something that can be repeated over a period of time because I need you to spend more time over here. God will give you the simple things, the small things in your life to make clear to you and give you strategies and the actions that you need to take so we ain't frustrated, burned out, and overwhelmed trying to figure it out on our own. He don't never leave us. He says, I'm with you. All we got to do is choose to go to him for the counsel and the advice, the strategies on how we should approach every single thing in our lives. So thank you for listening today. I hope today's wisdom has inspired you. I hope it challenges you, and I hope it encourages you to know that you do not have to go it alone and how to release yourself from the stress of trying to do it alone and just let God give you the strategy for the actions that you need to take each and every day. Thank you so much for being here. You guys have a great and wonderful day, and we'll meet you back on the line tomorrow morning.
I hope you enjoyed the episode of Wisdom Inspired that was brought to you by the AAC Co-working Community, a virtual community designed to support female entrepreneurs, business owners, and freelance professionals. For more, go to wisdominspired.net.